The hospital lights hummed softly above me, like tired bees. They made the hallway look cold and endless. My heart beat hard, louder than the buzzing, as if it wanted to run away. I lay flat on the rolling bed, the paper gown sticking to my sweaty skin. I held the thin blanket tight, as if it could protect me from what was coming next. My body had betrayed me with sickness. But worse than the sickness, worse than the tumors growing inside me, was the pain of the people who had betrayed me. The ones who should have been there to help me. My own family. A nurse bent down, her voice kind but careful. "Will your family be waiting in the lobby?" she asked. I turned my head toward the double doors at the end of the hall. I hoped, just for a moment, that they would be there. That they would come. That maybe, after everything, they would still care. And there they were. My parents stood by the doors, looking polished and perfect. My sister, Hannah, was next to them, wearing a bright, expensive coat. For a second, relief flickered inside me. Maybe they came to see me through this. Maybe they would hold my hand. But the words that came from my father froze my blood. He waved the nurse away and said, his voice sharp as broken glass, "Don't bother us if she dies. We're shopping for our real child's engagement dress." My mother's laugh followed, high and poisonous. "Finally," she said, "we have something worth celebrating, not this endless pity parade." She pulled at Hannah's wrist and started walking toward the elevators, leaving behind only her perfume and her cruelty. Hannah didn't even look at me. She twirled her hair and muttered, "Don't drag this out. The spotlight's mine today." The nurse's jaw tightened. She didn't speak. She only gave me a soft, pitying look as she adjusted my foreline. I wanted to scream, to rip out the tubes, to shout, "I am your daughter too." But my throat felt blocked, as if a heavy stone was pressing inside it. Tears blurred the bright ceiling lights above me. All I could see was the back of my parents as they walked away, their expensive shoes clicking on the tile like a victory march. The hallway felt like a tunnel of betrayal. My chest ached, not from the cancer but from their words. I remembered birthdays when Hannah got gold necklaces and I got second-hand books with torn covers. I remembered studying with a fever, only to be told, "Your sister needs the desk. Move." I remembered my father whispering when he thought I couldn't hear, "She's just extra weight." Now it was clear, I wasn't their child. I was their burden, disposable and replaceable. Someone the world wouldn't miss if she didn't wake up from surgery. The nurse squeezed my shoulder gently. "You're not alone," she whispered. But her kindness felt like a small drop in an ocean of cruelty. Inside the operating room, machines beeped steadily. The smell of cold antiseptic filled my lungs. Doctors leaned over me, speaking words I barely heard. All I could think was, if I don't wake up, the last thing my parents said to me was that I wasn't real family. That thought cut deeper than any knife. Tears rolled down my temples. I made a silent promise. If I survive, if I walk out of this room breathing, I will never crawl back to them again. I will make them feel the pain of being unwanted. I will rise, not as their daughter, but as their reckoning. The next day when I woke up after surgery, there was no comfort, no relief, just silence. No voices calling my name, no hand squeezing mine. Only the steady beep of machines and the quiet movements of nurses. My throat burned from the tube they had removed. My chest felt like it had been broken. I blinked through the fog, searching the room. The chair by my bed was empty. No flowers. No cards. No family. The same nurse leaned in and adjusted my blanket. She whispered, almost apologetically, "Your parents didn't check in. They left a message at the front desk." She slipped me a folded note. My hands trembled as I opened it. In my mother's neat handwriting it said, "Focus on getting discharged quickly. We don't have time for this drama. Hannah needs us for her engagement plans." No love. No promise to visit. Just dismissal. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. My body shook, not from pain but from rage. I had almost died, my veins bruised, my skin pale. But to them, it was just an inconvenience. The following week was worse. I was recovering slowly, dragging myself down sterile hallways for short walks, clutching the four-pole like a lifeline. One afternoon, Hannah appeared in my doorway, but not alone. Mom was behind her, holding shopping bags. Hannah glanced around my room like it smelled. "Oh," she said flatly. "You're still here." "I just had surgery," I croaked. Mom chuckled, setting her bags on the windowsill. "Surgery isn't an excuse for laziness. Hannah tried on 10 dresses today. She looked stunning. The seamstress said she's radiant. People are already saying she deserves all the attention." Hannah smirked and twirled in a shimmering gown. "Don't be bitter. Some of us were born to shine. You were born to take up space in hospital beds." My vision blurred, partly from tears, partly from the medicine. I whispered, "I could have died." Dad walked in late, holding a suit bag. He didn't even glance at my chart. He said, "If you had, at least you wouldn't embarrass us by dragging out your illness during Hannah's engagement season. The timing would have been neater." The cruelty hung in the air like smoke. That night, I couldn't sleep. The morphine haze couldn't numb the wound in my chest that their words had opened. They had stripped me of everything a daughter deserves: love, comfort, dignity. They wanted me gone so they could keep celebrating Hannah. But they underestimated what cancer had given me: clarity. Facing death stripped away my fear. If I had survived the knife and the tumor, I could survive without them. And I could do more than survive. I could make them choke on the emptiness they left in me. As I grew stronger, I began writing everything down: dates, comments, their dismissals, the nurse's testimony, the note my mother left. I requested my hospital records, the proof that they weren't there, that the emergency contact line was blank while I was under anesthesia. Every time a nurse shook her head at their absence, I stored it away like ammunition. They thought Hannah's engagement would overshadow everything. They thought I would fade like a shadow while she sparkled. But shadows know how to grow. I decided I would not scream or beg. I would turn their own obsession, their hunger for image, status, and admiration, into the very noose that strangled their pride. For once, it wouldn't be my life on the line. It would be theirs. The day of Hannah's engagement party arrived like a dark storm cloud. The invitations were printed on thick, gold-trimmed cards boasting of a union of two perfect families. My parents bragged about the catering, the musicians, even the imported wine. Not once did they mention my surgery or my recovery. To them, I didn't exist. But I made sure I would. In the weeks after I left the hospital, I worked quietly and deliberately. Like the cancer that had spread silently through me, my plans spread into every corner of their glittering world. I didn't need fists or shouting. I had documentation. I had witnesses. And most importantly, I had their own arrogance: every cruel word, every absence, every dollar they spent on Hannah instead of supporting me. The engagement party was held in a grand ballroom, chandeliers dripping crystals onto tables lined with roses. Guests arrived in sequin dresses and tailored suits. Cameras flashed. Hannah stood on the stage in her white gown, smug and radiant. Mom stood beside her like a queen presenting her heir. Dad was shaking hands with business partners, talking loudly about family loyalty. I walked in just as the speeches were starting. The room went silent for a moment. My hair had grown back just enough to cover the scars. My dress was plain compared to the glittering crowd, but I didn't need sparkle. I had truth. Mom's smile froze. "What are you doing here?" she hissed under her breath. I lifted a thick folder of papers so people could see. The projector on the ballroom wall flickered. Slides began to play, arranged by the reporter who had agreed to help me. The first slide was a scan of the hospital record: emergency contact, none provided. Then came the nurse's signed statement, Parents refused to be contacted. Stated they were shopping for their other child's engagement dress. Murmurs started immediately. Glasses clinked nervously. Next slide, a photo of Hannah grinning in a boutique mirror, trying on dresses, the same date and timestamp as my surgery. Then the note my mother had left at the front desk that says, "Focus on getting discharged quickly. We don't have time for this drama." Gasps filled the room. A woman covered her mouth. A man whispered, "Oh my God." Dad stormed toward the projector, shouting, "Turn this off. This is lies." But the next slide silenced him, a video clip of Hannah herself bragging on Instagram Live. "We told the nurse not to bother us with her surgery. Can you imagine? I had to pick a dress. This is way more important." The audience's reaction was instant. No more murmurs, just open disgust. Guests stood up, glaring at my parents. One of Dad's business partners shook his head and walked out. The pastor, who had come to bless the engagement, whispered something to Mom and slipped away. Hannah's fiancé's family looked horrified. His mother clutched her pearls and said loudly, "We will not attach ourselves to this cruelty." She pulled her son off the stage, ignoring Hannah's desperate cry. Mom's face drained of color. Dad stuttered, It's a misunderstanding." But the damage was done. Phones were recording. The hashtag had already begun to spread. I stood in the center of it all, calm. Inside my bag was a small photo of my daughter, a silent reminder of why I fought. I didn't scream. I didn't gloat. I just said one sentence, steady and clear. "You told the world I wasn't worth your time. Now the world knows you aren't worth theirs." And then I walked out. By the next morning, the story was everywhere, local news, social media, even national outlets hungry for a scandal. The glamorous family, once praised for their values, was now being torn apart for abandoning their own child in surgery for a shopping trip. Dad lost contracts. Mom was asked to step down from her charity board. Hannah's engagement collapsed overnight. For me, life didn't suddenly become easy. My body was still healing. My future was uncertain. But I had something they could never buy back, dignity. That night, when I tucked my daughter into her crib, I whispered, "You'll never be disposable." Not to me. The cancer hadn't killed me, but I had killed the illusion my parents lived on. Their laughter was gone. Their pride turned to ash. And their faces, once smug and cruel, were forever remembered pale under the ballroom chandeliers, exposed in front of the world they craved. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Also comment where you're watching from.